How does catechesis relate to the overall process of evangelization? Perhaps you don't even realize that there is a process of evangelization, right? Traditionally speaking, this process of evangelization begins with what we would call pre-evangelization, right? Building up trust and getting to know folks and missionaries setting up farms and hospitals and that sort of thing in a new territory. That's pre-evangelization. It's not directly addressing who Jesus is or what he wants for us or the plan of the church and prayer life and all that kind of thing, right? So that's pre-evangelization. When someone responds to that with some initial interest, some initial spark of faith, not even necessarily spark of faith yet, initial interest, then it's time for what's called first proclamation or preaching the kerygma or the basic gospel message, right? This is who is Jesus and what does he have to do in your life in a relatively succinct way with a desire for people to respond to that, right? We traditionally think of that as that's a Protestant street preacher thing. That's been a Catholic thing well before there ever was a Protestant, right? Presenting to people who Jesus Christ is and how he addresses the deepest desires of the human heart, right? So pre-evangelization, kerygma or first proclamation. Then when they respond in faith, then it's time for initiatory catechesis. That's where we live a lot of the time in catechesis. We sometimes forget the initiatory part though, right? We are catechizing the individual to initiate them into a full Christian life. Right? The church talks about catechesis as an apprenticeship in Christian living, not just as a memorizing of the lists, right? An apprenticeship in the whole of Christian living. That's liturgical, that's spiritual, that's certainly dogmatic and doctrinal, that is charitable, right? Missionary outreach. All of that is included in that. Uh, and so after initiatory catechesis comes actual sacramental initiation, right? Initiatory catechesis gears them towards being able to fully participate in the initiation rites of the church, which are then followed by mystagogy, unpacking that mystery that they just experienced. And then after mystagogical catechesis comes lifelong formation for missionary discipleship. That's the process of evangelization as the church has articulated it for a very, very long time. The unfortunate reality in our own day, which you've probably seen before if you're certainly if you're in catechesis now, but just even talking about the faith with other people, practicing Catholics, so semi-practicing Catholics, people don't typically fall into those neat categories anymore. We don't we don't often have the luxury of someone else has preached the gospel to this person, they have made a response in faith, and now they're showing up in my classroom because they want to be initiated and they want to grow in that knowledge of Jesus Christ. Very, very often anymore, people are experiencing that entire continuum at any one point, essentially, right? Any grade level, any age level. So we can't necessarily differentiate that. My task in a classroom catechetical session is just to teach them the doctrine, and somebody else will get them in a close personal relationship with Jesus. The church has thrown out, frankly, that model in favor of what the U.S. bishops, at least, are starting to call evangelizing catechesis. Other places call it kerygmatic catechesis. Right? This idea that we have to constantly deepen our personal adherence to God and begin that for people in some cases. Some of our students have never made any level of faith commitment to Jesus Christ. They might be adults coming to Bible studies, coming to catechetical sessions, coming to speaking events, and they have never decided for themselves definitively, I want to follow Jesus. They were just kind of thrown into this thing. They were raised in it. They married into it, and they just kind of went along with the motion without making a decision, a choice. Like I want to do this thing, right? In some ways, they're tolerating being Catholic. They're not choosing to be Catholic, and it's not always a conscious thing either, right? Many of us might find ourselves in this position. As I'm saying this, you might be thinking, I don't know if I've ever decided to follow Jesus either. If you haven't, I invite you to consider it and actually make that choice verbally or even just in your heart, right? But catechesis is to deepen that personal adherence to God and maybe awaken that or reawaken that in people, um, that initial faith, right? And so it's centered on this catechetical moment that's called the kerygma. And so this is why catechesis is considered the privileged moment within the process of evangelization. It's not just another piece of the process, it's a privileged moment because it's deepening that initial faith, that response to the kerygma, to the initial proclamation. And check this out, the Directory for Catechesis is quoting Pope Francis from Evangelizing Gaudium, Joy of the Gospel, about this. And it says, this first proclamation, this kerygmatic proclamation, this preaching the gospel of who Jesus is and what he has in store for us. This first proclamation is called first, not because it exists at the beginning and then can then be forgotten or replaced by other more important things. It is first in a qualitative sense because it is the principal proclamation the one which we must hear again and again in different ways, the one which we must announce one way or another throughout the process of catechesis at every level and moment. This is the Directory for Catechesis, paragraph 68. It's first not just in time, it's first qualitatively, and we have to go back to it again and again and again at every moment along the way. So, what is the, the kerygma? What is this basic gospel message? It's that God created us to be in a relationship with Him. God is on our side. He is good, right? And our sin separates us from God. We all choose to separate ourselves from God. Every single person can recognize, big or small, can recognize there's bad stuff going on in the world around us, and it makes us unhappy, right? And so sin is the cause of all this unhappiness. God would literally rather die than risk spending eternity without you and without me. And so he doesn't just stand back and hope that we find him. He comes to us. He becomes human, right? He enters the world with a created nature, as a fully God, fully human person. And he enters into our space and he redeems us. He takes away our sin. And then he invites us to enter into that dynamic relationship with him, where he works on us to get rid of all the sin and the dysfunction in our lives. And that's holiness, right? So God created us for a relationship with him. Our sin separates us. Jesus came to restore that relationship, and now we have to respond in faith and accept it. And the whole catechetical enterprise, every topic that we ever teach in any catechetical session, has to be geared towards that dynamic. Why do we have anointing of the sick? Why does that exist? What has it relates to this dynamic of the kerygma? Why do we have a fifth commandment, a sixth commandment, a seventh commandment? Well, it relates back to this dynamic relationship. Why is there a pope? Why do we genuflect? Why do we do any of this stuff? It all relates back to this dynamic relationship of God wanting to be in close personal relationship with us. Explaining all that stuff helps us to enter more deeply into that and give a deeper, fuller response of faith. And this is why catechesis isn't something separate from evangelization. It's a part of the overall process, and in fact, a privileged part of it. So long gone are the days. I don't know if the church ever actually articulated that this is the way things are, right? But long gone are the days where evangelization is something that happens out in the missions, and then we catechize in the classroom. They're the same thing going on, especially in Western culture and a post-Christian culture, where people are drifting away, walking away from the faith at times, or never fully entered it. We've got generations now of families who are just kind of going through the motions and never made an actual decision. That might be surprising to think of it that way because they make a decision to register for faith formation. They make a decision to go to Mass, at least sometimes. They make things that look like decisions, but they haven't decided to follow Jesus personally yet, necessarily. Or they need to be renewed in that, or reawakened in that, or have that decision that maybe they did make once upon a time deepened again. That's our task in catechesis. That's what we're getting at as we echo down what Jesus gave us through his apostles, through the church. We're always doing it towards with this goal in mind, towards this end game of our deepening response in faith to the person of Jesus Christ.